Well, Dusty, it's lovely to see you. I know that you're an animal lover, but you and the Pet Shop Boys joined up for quite different reasons. How did it happen?
Well, they like to tell the story that they sent me a tape, which was What Did I Do to Deserve This? They said that they sent me that for their first album. In fact, I was listening to them and sort of hovering in California and thinking, who are these lads? They sound really great. And the track was great, and I liked their sound. It was sort of big and full and sort of slightly over the top. And in fact, I got the tape in time for the second album, so it seemed like the right time to do it.
And here you are. 63 now was the year of your first hit, in fact, wasn't it? I Only Want to Be With You.
That's
and that
right.
is the time that the story of the film Scandal is covering as well. Do you remember all that scandal?
Well, actually, sort of, I think sort of peripherally, because we were all sort of very busy making our own little scandals and sort of blundering through the 60s and sleeping through some of them. I really sort of spent the first 5 years of my career not really being aware of what those words meant. You know, sort of...
What, scandal?
Naughty. Well, I sort of knew that one, but there were other naughtier words. Sort of words like love nest in the tabloids. Someone's always caught in a love nest. Have you noticed that? Sipping champagne. That's very naughty to sip champagne in a love nest. So, I mean, the sleaze factor of it didn't really hit me until several years later, when I sort of became aware of all sorts of things to do with the sleaze factor. But really, the film is what makes it clear to me. I think sometimes in hindsight, I think in general, time diffuses the thing and they only sort of go, oh yeah, Christine Keeler, I remember her, but they're not quite sure what they remember her for. And indeed, the film is explanatory in a very strong way. It's... I
hope it's accurate.
It's actually not at all what I expected. I expected it to be somewhat sensationalistic and sort of tabloid. But actually, it's a romance, because I think that no one ever really concentrated on the fact that actually Christine Keeler was crazy about Stephen Ward and had very real feelings.
But this gets the Guardian treatment, does it? That's
yes, it does indeed.
This 60s revival that's going on, and is it all pure joy for you?
I'm very grateful for the past, and I think there's a danger of revivals being faddist. And if you get, you know, it's rather like somebody redoing an old one of their songs. And it's sort of like being a one-hit wonder all over again. And I never really wanted to be tied in with the past. I'm very grateful for it. But I would never want to redo things. I'm glad that there's an interest in the 60s. Samantha
Fox has done I Only Want to Be With You. Do you mind this?
No, I think it's great. I wish I'd written it. But lots of old records get covered, you know, sort of stay around, they come around. Elvis Presley covered You Don't Have to Say You Love Me.
Do you know
that
Ready, Steady, Go is being repeated on Channel 4? Have you actually seen that?
Oh, yes, they've got videos out in the States of that. I mean, they really are amazing, aren't they? What a hair! God, if you slept on it, you'd need a spanner to get it out.
But it was live. Was it absolute chaos?
Absolutely. I mean, it's just... Especially the New Year's Eve ones. I mean, they were nuts, because everyone was, you know, had far too much to drink. And, like, they used to announce people and they weren't there. I don't know, they passed out or something. I'm sure Sandy Shaw didn't pass out, but she wasn't there, so I had to do always something there to remind me with no shoes on, I know that. Because, like, there was no one to fill in. Somebody had to do it. I just happened to be standing there at the time. I also filled in for Gene Pitney once. That was interesting. Well, he's smaller than I am.
What did you take off for that? I was wondering.
I don't know. Beard? I don't know.
And you interviewed as well on that show, didn't you?
Yeah, I had 3 weeks off between the end of the Springfields and the beginning of me. And I got to be the MC, or commaire, they used to say, very posh, because they were still stuck with Hélène Corday, you remember? Yes. Very French, so commaire was the word, but actually we were just sort of doing interviews. And it was quite nerve-wracking, actually, because I can't see cue cards, so I had to remember everything, which is very dodgy.
Dodgy indeed.
Very dodgy.
Your famous panda look. Now, I actually talked to you in the early 60s at Alexandra Palace in a little programme called Town and Around, and then I couldn't see the eyes because you had the full panda.
I probably couldn't see you.
No.
I know.
But it spawned so many lookalikes, didn't it?
Yes, I mean, it was sort of like Clone City, if you were sort of Ready, Steady, Go, or Thank You, Lucky Stars, or any of those shows. There were sort of all these domes, you know, these sort of domed people with beehives and black eyes. I mean, it's very lucky I was nearsighted because that could be quite shocking.
You were in California for, what, 14 years? Did you go for the natural look while you were there?
No, I really I wish I could get a tan, but so many of my friends sort of turn into handbags. I'm not sure that they're friends after that, I come to think of it. But I think I'd rather be pale and moderately interesting than leather.
But during that time, were you hooked on various addictions?
I was addicted to all sorts of things in those days, and it was, so were so many of us. I mean, it was basically, I'm an addictive personality. I just ate 3 Mars bars, which is not a good idea to come on the Aspel show and do that. Energy, right? Energy. But I think a lot of us that went through the 60s went through a training period of being ravers. And I think it was encouraged. I mean, the more you sort of fell downstairs and got lunatic behaviour, oh, she's a right card, isn't she? And actually, it worked for a while. It is a double standard, because I think there's nothing funny about a drunken woman, there's nothing funny about a very stoned woman, and yet, in a way, there's a mystique more for men. But if women have problems like that, I mean, it's ugly for anyone, in my opinion, and there were some problems. And that was 10 years ago. But it's not easy to get rid of. I wouldn't recommend joining that particular club, but everything's going fine.
How did you stop then?
It's not a matter of willpower, it's just a matter of really finding that you dislike yourself so much and you're behaving like such a complete creep. Some people never realize that about themselves, and I think it's a blessing. But so I didn't have to work at it. I did have a lot of support from people who'd gotten sober, gotten clean, and knew how to stay that way. It's very easy to stop drinking, stop doing drugs. It's not easy to stay stopped.
And now you're on the Mars bars, you see.
Yeah, but I know. Or else it's people. I have problems, you know. I mean, I'm an obsessive person. And now I'm obsessed with cats, and that's relatively healthy, you know.
Why did you go to live in Holland?
It was as close as I could get the cats to England from California, without them having to go through quarantine, but I got cold feet. They would have been fine in quarantine, and they will have to come in May. But I thought of moving in. It's a very nice little cell. They have these kennels out by the airport, and it's sort of red and it has bars on it. And I thought if I got a caravan in the grounds. I asked if I could work there at night. Because I'm an insomniac, I might as well clean litter boxes all night. And, you know, there are about 50 cats, and I like making cats comfortable. It's a whole new career.
Well, there are no handbags in Holland either, I suppose.
No handbags? Well, they all go to Spain and get, like, handbags.
I'm very glad you're here, and I want, please, for you to go back to that first solo hit of yours. I only want to be with you.
Just don't compare me with Samantha.
Sing it, please.
She's got bigger titties than I do.
Now for a man of strong views. He has described the House of Commons as a fun factory where members try to pretend that custard pie throwing is high responsibility. He should know he's an MP, although a week or so ago he was sacked by Neil Kinnock from Labour's front bench because he took a job with Sky Television. He also claims to be unable to keep his mouth shut. That's what I'd like to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, Austin Mitchell.
Thank you for singing the number that Norman Tebbit and I will be saying to each other.
Yes.
I love your tie. Amazing.
No introductions required, of course.
Oh, no, well, I'm a great fan ever since Needles and Pins are in, was that 63?
Amazing. It was way back, yes. Yes.
Yes, we all remember that one, yes.
Indeed, man.
So, Austin, you've got a job, then you lost another one. What happened?
Well, I took a job with Sky Television, largely because I like television. I'm not addicted to it, but on the other hand, I enjoy doing it. It's exciting, and it seemed to me I didn't bother telling anybody because it didn't seem to be that important. And then, a week ago, I was called in by Neil. I thought he'd read my horoscope in my wife's magazine, which said that my career will have a rapid takeoff this month. So I thought he was perhaps calling me along to consult as to how he could help. It turned out he was going to fire me. So he said the job was incompatible with being a front-bench spokesman for the Labour Party.
And you don't really think that is the real reason?
Oh, no, that's the reason they actually came up with the day after I'd been fired. I was fired first, and the reason came along afterwards. The argument was that it would be bad for me to be seen interviewing Labour front-bench spokesmen as a front-bench spokesman myself, although I was only a junior one. I was spokesman for industry. Any industry that closed down or was sold off automatically became my responsibility. So I had an enormous responsibility. But that was the explanation that came up afterwards. I think it was really just hostility to an MP having two jobs, to working for Murdoch, to making what was assumed to be, but actually isn't, enormous amounts of money. And this all rolled in together and they just decided to fire me.
We're talking about good old-fashioned jealousy here.
Well, in part, I suppose so, yeah.
But a lot of them ripe for Murdoch anyway, don't they?
Oh, I don't think that's a particular crime to write for Murdoch. I mean, it seems to me I'm now on detached duty behind the enemy lines, as it were. And it seems to me the job of a political party to put over its case wherever it can. And if I can do as I am doing, which is to put a left point of view as an antidote to Norman Tebbett's right point of view on television, well, that's a service to the party.
And you think, in hindsight, it's quite a good decision, do you?
Well, I wasn't really given the choice, but I'm quite enjoying doing it.
Well, you're stuck with it now, aren't you?
Yes, I'm stuck with it. That's right. The rocket's taken off and...
He's a star!
And well, that's accidental. It was a bad news day. I mean, nobody had heard of me before or the job I'm doing. Now, I'm almost as well known as Emma Ridley now.
And you're telling far more people about it now than you might actually tell on your Sky programme.
That's probably true.
Norman Tebbit supported you against Neil Kinnock. Were you pleased and grateful for that?
Well, what a kind, gentle nature, I thought, to come in and attack the Labour Party in that fashion. I thought it was... I could have strangled him, frankly. But my daughter, when I got home the next day, said, why were you so rude to Norman Tebbit? He was very nice coming to your help. She thought it was a genuine concerned gesture.
How old is your daughter?
She's 21.
Oh. Now, you of course, know television. You're a former television presenter anyway. Are you going to help Norman Tebbit with his style and image?
Well, Norman Tebbit's reputation is formed in the House of Commons. He's got this kind of instinct for an exposed groin, and he always puts his knee in it. It's a fairly studied attack in the House of Commons. I mean, he's always one for a quick, terse comment, supplemented where possible by a quick rabbit punch to the back of the neck. And that's his style. And that's the nature of the House of Commons. It's a confrontation situation. It doesn't come over well on television. If he's going to do that on television, it's going to get nowhere. And I think... he knows that, so he'll be trying to tone it down. I shall try and help him.
Did you want a good show, after all?
Well, we want to put our points of view. It's the ideas we're concerned with. I think people are frankly fed up of politicians arguing with each other and always saying, before I answer that question, can I just reply to what my opponent here said?
Right.
We'll wrestle in mud for a small fee. I think people are frankly fed up of that. They want to discuss the ideas behind politics, the values that parties have. But they, who said what in 1968 or 1983 or what, they're totally turned off by.
Will he get Margaret Thatcher for you?
Well, I hope he'll try. I mean, I don't fancy interviewing Margaret Thatcher. Is this the throne Mrs Thatcher sat on when she came on your programme?
I fear not, that we had different chairs at that time.
I thought it fitted beautifully. That's a shame.
No, these were designed just for this little show.
Well, Mrs Thatcher tends to talk... and it's difficult to interrupt. She lowers her voice an octave and talks to you as if your dog has just died. I find it very difficult to deal with that because I think it was Joe Haynes.
Sort of,
Joe Haynes
yeah.
said that my interviewing style when I used to work on television was like throwing marshmallows at people. So
Now, who is going to watch? I mean, who, not how many. Who is going to watch this show?
my mother's going to watch.
This is important.
She watches all my programmes. She told me when I was first elected that I shouldn't be so aggressive and I should keep quiet and shut up. I find that very difficult to do. She's the best critic, and I suppose I can record bits and see it that way, but I will watch.
Yes. We remember the
So there'll be
days...
two viewers, my mother and I.
Yes, double figures, anyway.
But if one of us switches off, think what we'll do to the ratings.
Holland, actually. But it's the old format.
Right.
I'm looking forward to the new one very much.
We remember the days of black and white television before satellites and dishes and video recorders and all that. Do you remember your favourite programme of that time?
I was in New Zealand through the 60s. It was a period I missed out on. I went to New Zealand in 1959, and then it was a case of please put your watches back 10 years when you go to New Zealand.
Absolutely.
And I came back in 63, and I found Britain had gone mad, and there was, what was it, the whistle test? No, 6-5 Special.
6-5 Special.
And then Ready, Steady, Go came along, didn't it? And I thought the Beatles were... I mean, the world seemed to have changed. 1963 was my paradise year because Labour looked as though it was about to win, the Macmillan government looked as though it was crumbling, it looked as though the old Britain was dying, Yorkshire accents were in for another thing, and...
kitchen sink drama.
That's right, and Z Cars on the BBC, and it looked as though we were about to change totally. It sort of petered out, didn't it?
Yes, it did rather spend itself. You interviewed the Beatles, you knew them well, of course, Dusty, apart from being a singer and a star at the time.
Yeah, well, that was just briefly on Ready, Steady, Go during those 3 weeks. And,
Was it profound? What did you ask?
Not particularly. Because I do remember asking John Lennon if those were his own teeth. And he profoundly answered, yes, so those are your own spots. I was extremely spotty. It's been a constant war with Clearasil ever since.
I interviewed John Lennon once, and I was so terrified that they stopped the interview for the commercial break. I had to go outside and be sick and then come back and do it.
Well, I hope you don't have to interview Samantha Fox then. That'll be interesting. Jodie, do you remember that first job?
Yeah, I remember it. I was I was in the car, and it was a bad neighborhood, so my mother said that I should probably come in. My brother was going off on some kind of interview, and I tagged along, and they told him to take off his shirt because it was a suntan lotion, and I took off my shirt and showed all my muscles, and they asked me what my name was, and I said Alexander or something like that. And eventually I got the job and sort of didn't stop working since then.
You were 3 then?
Yeah, I was 3.
You were precocious intellectually as well, weren't you? You've always been a very bright kid.
Ah, it's a strange word, isn't it? Yeah, I guess I was. I mean, I read early and things like that. We used to go to Mexico all the time, and I'd read all the beer commercial things on the side of the highway and stuff like that. In Spanish. Yeah, I guess so.
And you were reading and rejecting scripts at the age of 5?
Yeah, kind of one of those Woody Allen character, right, with the little glasses and leather and whatnot.
Yeah.
So.
Now, one of your early films, Bugsy Malone, which was made here, wasn't it? That was
Yeah.
an all-kid cast. Was it fun?
Oh, it was great fun. I mean, nobody saw it in the United States, but I guess it was a hit over here. It was fun. It was also kind of, it was sort of like there was kind of like gangs. There was the girls from, the dancers from, Lancaster and stuff, and they would wait for you at Pinewood. They would wait for you around the sides of the buildings with, big fire extinguishers, and they'd say, "What's the password?" And if you didn't know, they would just splash you all the time. And there was kind of a rivalry between the Americans. That most of them were children working on army bases. They had grown up on army bases, and the English. But it was fun. It was like a crazy, kind of a riot of a place. 500 kids.
And you were Tallulah, the speakeasy queen. Now, who did you model yourself on?
Well, supposedly I modeled myself on, Mae West or whatever it was, and Alan Parker said, be just like all these people, and I said, fine, but I didn't know who they were. I didn't really watch old movies, and I was young, so I kind of just did whatever.
Some primeval instinct took over.
Yeah, the Tallulah instinct, right?
Did you have time for a normal childhood?
I guess so. I mean, I think my childhood was really healthy. I'm sure it probably wasn't normal in that it wasn't like everybody else's, but it was a great education. I got to travel all over the place, and there was a certain kind of confidence that was instilled in me at a very illusory confidence. I mean, there's no reason why anybody was so nice to me, but which I think is important for kids.
Your mum is your manager too. Has she always been totally in charge of your life?
Well, not totally in charge of my life, but she's always traveled with me. There were a few years where I decided that I wanted to travel alone, and then I got very I get very lonely when I work, and it's nice having her around because I'm mean to her and she doesn't care. You know, she doesn't hate me forever or leave or something like that. She doesn't mind so much.
But how did she allow you, at the age of 12, to play the part of a child prostitute in Taxi Driver?
Well, you know, Martin Scorsese is, I think, is the greatest American director that we have right now, and we were a big fan of his from Mean Streets, and I had done a film with him. Alice doesn't live here anymore. So, in fact, Martin really, he really thought I could do the part. My mother wasn't convinced that I really could do it, that I was sort of sophisticated enough to do it. So, he kind of prodded us into it. But we're, you know, a pretty open-minded family. I mean, we marched in civil rights and all that kind of stuff.
Did you actually see the film?
Oh, yeah. I couldn't see it in England. I tried to go see it in England, but they wouldn't let me in. I was under 18. So, yeah.
Did you see it, Dusty and Austin?
Taxi Driver, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a great.
It was stunning. I mean, it was, apart from anything, I was just watching Robert De Niro saying, "You're talking to me."
Yeah. It's,
Just the way he used to rehearse in front of that mirror. And I mean, it really, you saw the madness coming, the obsession coming, I mean, just the whole atmosphere, and you were brilliant in it.
Oh, thanks.
No, it was a marvellous film. I mean, people had a go at it for a lot of violence, but it needed to be there. That's what it was about.
Well, it was real.
You know, the end of it was about what he had to do, coming out of an obsession that he had developed. And it was just a stunning film.
Yeah, it's better sort of to take risks and be courageous and risk great failure, I
Yeah,
think, than to do
somebody's
something
always going to
halfway.
have a go at that.
Well, your latest film, The Accused, in which you are brilliant, did you take it because, and it's not for the first time you've played a brutalised woman, did you take the film because it was a good part or because you felt the story had something to say?
Well, originally it was the character, because Sarah Tobias is a sort of wild, great character. She's all of those things that people don't value in our culture. She's fun, she's sensual and emotional, and she believes in astrology, and she doesn't analyze herself. She just tells you how she feels, and she's just incredibly honest. And girls like that, you know, nobody hands them $10,000. Nobody, puts and makes them the head of General Motors. So she's not a very popular heroine. And that was initially the reason I took it. You know, the political themes are pretty much in the background of the movie, and I think it's where they should be in movies. They shouldn't be hitting you over the head in the foreground.
It isn't the story simply of a rape trial, is it? Is it a true incident?
No, a lot of people think it is because there was a famous gang rape trial in New Bedford, but it doesn't really bear any resemblance to it. That was a race issue and all sorts of... That's it, yeah. It doesn't really bear any resemblance to it, but it's really surprising, and it shocked me, obviously how many rapes happen every 6 minutes in the United States, but 1 out of 4 rapes are gang rapes, which is a shocking statistic to me.
And mostly in college, I read.
That's right, yeah, fraternity rapes and things like that.
It's not only rapists in the film, of course. The most important part is that the ones who incited them to rape are the ones you take to court as well. Is that a legal precedent? Has it occurred?
No, it hasn't. I mean, there are a couple states that have criminal solicitation laws, but I don't think that they've ever taken rape. We're trying, obviously, that's the intent of the film, to make people think about that. But no, it isn't legislated, and there's no legislation that any witnesses have to do anything, really, to report crimes or anything like that in the United States.
I've read a lot about how traumatic it was for you to make the film, particularly the rape scene itself. Was it really so, or is that a publicity hype?
Well, it's not a publicity hype. Sure, it was difficult, but I tell you, I don't think I've ever been as happy making a movie as on this one, because every night you came home and it's a good film, and it's about real people, and it's also, Sarah has a great sense of humor, and what's great about her is that nobody's going to kill that. You know, she doesn't turn into some sort of, there is no such thing as a victim personality. It doesn't exist. Anybody can be a victim, and she's willing to fight for her dignity, and she really has a lot of integrity, I think.
Is this the kind of film that you two would like to see, do you feel, from what you've heard?
Very much so.
I think if it's as described in The Guardian, as you describe it now, The Guardian incidentally said it was based on a true incident, so much for facts. If it were as described there, I wouldn't want to see it. I'd feel squeamish. I mean, squeamish about real human situations. I can stand seeing Friday the 13th films forever with mad axemen chopping people to bits. That doesn't seem real. But a terrible real situation like that, no, I wouldn't want to.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, a lot of people have said to me, well, you know, it's not the kind of film I ever wanted to see, it's not the kind of film you take a date to, but the truth is that even if you don't like the picture, everybody comes out and they do not stop talking about it for an hour afterwards, whether they liked it or not. It's had a phenomenal effect in the United States, or I've never seen anybody come out of the film and not, you know, discuss it, hit each other, get upset, you know.
It's also moving with the social tide, isn't it, in the sense that there's a greater awareness of the horror of rape and a greater awareness of the need to do something about it, which has gone a long way in this country, but not as far as the States, I'd imagine.
Well, I don't know about that. Yeah, I think that's exactly on the right track.
It's taken more seriously. What used to be kind of a joke issue is now taken very seriously.
Yeah, and this film really addresses the issue of the worst case. You know, people saying somebody asked for it, and she is the worst case. This girl drinks, she smokes pot, she has a good time, she's flirtatious and sensual, sexy. She's confident.
She's a human being, but not a politician, in other words.
Right, she's all those things. That's right.
And she has a right to say no.
That's right. And she's all those things that society disvalues, but none of that means that because you're attractive, that necessarily that means that violence is due to you. And it really, the film really points to that fact, which no other rape film has ever done, that it doesn't really, that rape or violence is not an answer to attraction. It's not a logical answer. It's not a question that should be asked.
Dusty, have you seen it? Did it make you angry? Do you know about it?
No, I'm afraid I haven't seen it, but I definitely will. I mean, you're talking about certain films that would be too strong for people when you address this film, and I think that people are, there's a large section of the public that is willing to be moved and to be upset. Basically, I like to see good acting. I like to be moved.
Yeah.
And good acting to me is when I forget that people are acting.
Jodie, you're associated with all these traumatic roles. I suppose you now feel that time is right for a little light comedy.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't mind a little light comedy. But actually, I've never really, I don't know about them being traumatic. I think I've done a lot of serious films, challenging kind of films. And I never really, when I was younger, I didn't really play characters that were specifically, you know, 12 or specifically 10. They were actually individuals. They had personalities and things that perturbed them. So I guess that means they were sort of traumatized, yeah.
You're bilingual, aren't you? French is your other tongue.
Yes.
Have you been offered films in Europe?
Yeah, I did 2 films in France, in French, and I do all my dubbing in French. It gives me an opportunity to come over and use it, and actually it makes the films better when they're dubbed.
You've been in Paris being interviewed over there. They must be very grateful to hear this fluent French.
Well, I guess so. You know, they never acted. Yeah, it's kind of,
it's cool, France.
Superior all the time.
I love France. I spent a lot of time there.
Could you live abroad?
You know, I could. I can live abroad for about 3 months, and then I get, you know, if somebody hasn't eaten the same cereal as me, I have trouble. After about 3 months, I say, you know, where were you when Rice Krispies came about? And what about that show? Did you know that show? It starts irritating me that we don't have the same backgrounds. It's just a dumb habit of mine, I think, that I'm such a homebody that I kind of have to have that.
Well, thank goodness we all got together here tonight, and I'm delighted you did. Jodie Foster, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And Austin Mitchell. And Dusty Springfield.